Good morning. I love coming to this church. You guys are just so sweet. I just met Gail. Is that Gail? Yes, a little while ago. And so I wanted to let you know, you already know I'm not the pastor, and I'm not even a preacher. I just like to tell stories, okay? Today's story actually kind of grew into a message. So you get a kind of a double header. It starts kind of as a story and then it has a message, okay? I have some things up here, some books and a little model, and you're welcome to come up after the service and look at those, and I can explain to you what they are and what the meaning is. Okay, so as we view cities today, Jerusalem was not a very big city. On the weekend in AD 31, there was a great multitude of ordinary people who had come to Jerusalem from all over the known world to celebrate the feast of the Passover. Devout Jews from every nation under heaven had traveled to Jerusalem for one of their 3 annual mega camp meetings, we could call it that. Jerusalem was already crowded with people who lived there. The Roman government hated it when Jerusalem held these feasts. So they had their armies there, not just foot soldiers to keep order, but some of these soldiers were engineers and carpenters and builders, and they were assigned to go to the forest and cut down trees to make crosses, just in case they were needed. There was one particular Roman centurion that we read about who was specifically in charge of the crucifixion. Now, he was a centurion. So how many soldiers would a centurion be in charge of? 100. They say 100, and it could be up to 250. But it's a lot of people, a lot of soldiers. So we know that at the cross, when Jesus was crucified, there was at least 100 Roman soldiers there. And this centurion, by the way, we know that he recognized that Jesus on the cross was the Son of God. It was not just those 100. There were many hundreds of soldiers. There were all throughout Jerusalem. And so we have in Jerusalem that weekend thousands of Jews from all over the known world, hundreds or maybe thousands of Roman soldiers, and the possibility that maybe there were multitudes of heavenly angels. That's what I kind of want to talk about. And as we learn, there were legions. How many are in a legion? 6,000 was in a Roman legion. Okay, so Satan had evil angels there, several legions. Imagine thousands of evil angels there, just to stir up trouble for Jesus and stir up hatred. And so you can believe that Satan had his legions for the biggest battle of his life as he tried to tempt Jesus. He had tried for 3.5 years, actually for the whole life of Jesus. He had tried to get Jesus to be tempted to sin because that would destroy the plan of salvation. Now, my purpose this morning is not just to talk about soldiers or multitudes, but it's to set the stage for a story about Ellen White and an experience that she had in March. So this was a Sunday afternoon, March the 14th. What is today? March 14. Okay, this was 1858, so 168 years ago today this happened. Ellen White was 30 years old. She had left her 3 young sons, Henry, age 10, Edson, age 8, and little Willie, age 3. She left them at home with a caretaker to accompany her husband, James White, age 36, to speak at a meeting house in northern Ohio, at a place that was known then as Lovett's Grove. Now, Lovett's Grove no longer exists as a community. But if you want to know where it is, head south from Flint, drive about 2 hours, past Ann Arbor, past Toledo, to a little place called Bowling Green, Ohio, and you're pretty much there. Then you'd have to ask somebody, well, where was the Lovett Grove meeting house? It was at the end of that meeting that a little boy had died in the community. And it was requested that James White, before he leave town, that he would conduct the funeral. During the funeral, it was customary for Ellen White to get up and console the congregation. This time, when she went to the platform to console the people, she went into vision. This is in the middle of a funeral service for a little boy. The vision lasted for 2 hours. Imagine these people. They've got to sit and wait for Ellen White to come out of vision before they can continue on with their funeral. But the vision did end, and the funeral commenced, and James and Ellen White started their journey home. They took a train ride, which ended in Jackson, Michigan, which is about 40 miles east of Battle Creek. On that train ride, Ellen shared with James that God wanted her to write out that vision and publish it in a book. They arrived at their destination. They visited in the home of friends, and that evening, Ellen White had a severe stroke. Okay? Now, she's 30 years old. She's having a stroke. But it was so bad that she thought she was going to die. And she was afraid she would never get to see her little boys again. But she survived through the night, and the next morning, James helped her quite a lot to get on board another train, which took them to Battle Creek. They arrived at their home on Wood Street. If you'd ever been to the village in Battle Creek, you probably have been in this home on Wood Street. Ellen was so weak that she could not go upstairs to her bedroom. So she stayed downstairs in a little bedroom that actually it no longer exists. It's become a closet. It was tiny. So the story is that she would write 1 page, and she was so weak she'd have to rest for 3 days and then write another page. But soon her strength revived, and she was able to go upstairs to her bedroom. And by late May, she was asked to tell the story of that vision. The vision was called The Great Controversy. It was about the whole, what was read about in the scripture passage a while ago. Starts with the fall of Lucifer in heaven, and it goes all the way to the end of time and beyond that, into the new earth. So at that time, there was a new meeting house that had been built in 1857, the year before, just a few months before. It was on Cass Street, which was maybe 3 blocks away from the house. And so there was a large meeting in May. There was about 400 people there. and they asked Ellen White to come and share what this vision was. So she arrived at the meeting house, listen to this, at 7 o'clock in the morning. That's when she started talking. She told about Lucifer falling from heaven. She talked for 5 hours. Now just imagine. It's pretty hard to sit through a 30-minute sermon, right? Okay, this is 5 hours. And then she's talking about beginning with the fall of Lucifer all the way to somewhere in the middle of the life of Christ. So by noon, they recessed the meeting because they needed a break. But there was also going to be a baptism, and the baptism occurred about 2 blocks south of the Cass Street meeting house, where you go down 2 blocks and you're at the Kalamazoo River. And the Adventists had a baptizing place right there. And so they baptized, I'm not sure exactly how many teenagers they baptized, but it's quite a number of young people that were baptized. And they did other things in their break time. But at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Ellen resumed her story. She spoke until 10 o'clock, okay? 10 hours to tell the story of the great controversy. Now, if I'd been in the congregation, I would think that I would have been pretty tired after listening all day. But this crowd they were ecstatic. They had never heard all of this information, and they wanted to respond. And so they spent the next hour just giving their testimonies and responding to what Ellen White had told them. Well, okay, so that puts it at 11 o'clock. Well, James White was pretty tired by 11 o'clock, and so he asked everybody to stand who wanted to support what they had heard that day. And so when they stood, he dismissed the meeting and sent them all to wherever they were staying for the night. He wrote about this experience in the next issue of the Review and Herald. And so that summer, Ellen continued to write and to send her writings to the publishing house, which was also new. It had something new in it. It had been established in 1854, so it was several years old, but there was something new in it. Let me see if I can use this. Can I use this? Okay, good, thank you. Okay, so the publishing house looked like this. This is a model of that original publishing house. Here's a couple of the printers out front that actually have printers' uniforms on to take care of all of the ink that they're smearing everywhere. Okay, and so in 1857, they had an old hand press, Washington hand press, and it would take all week for them to publish the review for that week. And it was a lot of hard labor. And so in 1857, James White went to Boston and he bought a new printing press. It became known as the steam press because it was run by steam, okay? So we have another little building out here to take care of the steam engine. The steam press, many books were published by steam press for several decades. I've got some up here, some of the old ones, really, really old. And on the front, they say Steam Press of the Seventh-day Adventist Publishing Association, Battle Creek, Michigan. This one's 1875. This one is 1871. But this is 1858. And so Ellen White finished writing her book, and it was published on September the 9th, I believe. in 1858. You can read it today in a little book called Spiritual Gifts, Volume 1. Okay? It was only 219 pages. And there's other places that we can find this story. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story. That little book, I've got another copy of it here. It has 41 really, really short chapters. And so looking at chapters 8 through 10, I want to just give you some highlights. In the chapter on Gethsemane, she says that angels were hovering about the place, witnessing the scene, while only one was commissioned to go and strengthen the Son of God in his agony. This is Gethsemane. Okay? So all of the angels, they would have been in heaven, and they're looking down on planet Earth, looking at Gethsemane, at Jesus, who is struggling to give his life, to give his blood for the salvation of the race. The angels in heaven, she says, they cast their crowns and harps from them, and with deepest interest, they silently watched Jesus. She said there's no war in heaven. They wished to surround the Son of God, but the commanding angels suffered them not, lest as they should behold his betrayal, they would deliver him, for the plan was laid out and it must be fulfilled. So they wanted to rescue Jesus, but they couldn't, because prophecy would not be fulfilled if they did that. Okay, so later in the same book, she says that when the crowd came to bind Jesus, and Peter cut off the ear of the servant, you know this story, Jesus said, "Thinkest thou that I cannot pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels?" That's 6,000 in a legion, so that's 72,000 angels. And Ellen White continues, "I saw that these words were spoken, and the countenances of the angels in heaven were animated. They wished then and there to surround their commander and disperse that angry crowd, but again sadness settled upon them, because Jesus added, 'But how then can the scriptures be fulfilled? It must be thus.'" A few pages later, she says, "Many companies of holy angels, each with a tall commanding angel at their head." Okay, so imagine there's going to be 100 angels, and then there's a tall angel at the head. They were sent to witness the scene. So they wanted to be on earth, and so they got to come to the earth. Many companies, so there would be many hundreds of angels that got to come to the earth. Now they had a job to do. They were to record every act, every insult, every cruelty that was imposed on the Son of God, and to register every pang of anguish which Jesus should suffer, for the very men should see it all again in living characters. When Jesus comes back, they're going to see the same thing. So the angels, as they left heaven in sadness, they laid off their glittering crowns. They could not wear them when their commander was suffering and was to wear a crown of thorns. Very thoughtful, very much in tune with what was happening. Meanwhile, Satan and his angels were busy in that judgment hall to destroy humanity and to destroy sympathy. She says the very atmosphere was heavy and polluted with their influence. Satan and his demons were working the crowd, hoping that Jesus would fail, and that the plan of salvation would fail, and that if that were the case, then Lucifer, Satan, would be in charge of the whole universe. at Jesus' trial. It was very difficult for the angels to endure the sight of mistreatment of Jesus. They would have delivered Jesus out of the hands of their enemies, but the commanding angels forbade them and said it was a great ransom that was to be paid for man, but it would complete and cause the death of Satan, who had the power of death. Jesus knew that the angels were witnessing the scenes of his humiliation. He knew that the feeblest angel could have caused that whole multitude to fall powerless, and they could have delivered Jesus. How did he know that? You remember the story somewhere in the Old Testament where an angel, there was a battle going on, and the angel came at night and slew 185,000 Assyrians? One angel, that's a lot of power, okay? So Jesus knew any of his angels, they could do this, but they had to restrain themselves. So there stood Jesus. They spit on his face. They blindfolded him. They struck him in the face. They cried out to him, "Prophesy to us, who hit you?" But nothing worked for Satan. He saw that Jesus never used his divine power to rescue himself. Afterward, Jesus was taken to the cross. As Jesus was crucified, Ellen White says, listen to this, companies of angels, those hundreds of angels, were marshaled in the air above the place of the crucifixion. Okay, I didn't realize that. So here's Jesus is being crucified, and up above, there's hundreds of good angels that are just there watching, kind of being marshaled. That means they're in order. They're not just flitting around. They're in order. She says they were moved to indignation, but they were not allowed to rescue Jesus. She says the angels viewed the horrid scene of crucifixion until they could no longer behold it, and they veiled their faces from the sight. And at the same time, the sun refused to shine, and Jesus cried with a loud voice, "It is finished." When that happened, Satan knew that he's going to die. Sooner or later, he's going to die, because he had failed. He had not succeeded in tempting Jesus to defend himself. But he decided, okay, well, I'm going to take as many of them with me when I die. I'm going to prevent as many people as possible to not receive salvation. So he resolved to attack the followers and prevent those people from following Jesus. She says later in this same book, the angelic host followed Jesus to the tomb. Mention all of these angels, and they're following Jesus to the tomb. She says, I beheld the angelic host watching with untold interest the resting place of Jesus. They guarded the sepulcher, earnestly waiting for the command to act their part in liberating the King of Glory from his prison house. Now, this is all of the heavenly host. This is all of those hundreds of angels. What were they waiting for? These were the angels that were waiting for after Jesus would be resurrected and go back to heaven to confirm with his Father that his sacrifice was sufficient. They were waiting to escort Jesus on his way back to heaven. Hundreds and hundreds and thousands of angels. And they would be singing songs of victory, majesty, and might to him that was slain and yet lives again as a mighty conqueror. Please read this book. I've got a little copy of it here as well. Probably you have this book. Please read it. There are many precious chapters describing this continuing war between Christ and his angels and Satan and his angels. And so the focal point of the book is about how this war was at its height at the cross. So Spiritual Gifts, Volume 1, that's something that you will want to read. As I reviewed these chapters, I wondered, why didn't I remember all of this when I read Desire of Ages? Okay, I didn't notice all of these angels, so I had to go back and reread Desire of Ages. Now this book is a whole lot bigger. It has over 800 pages, has many long chapters, and so I went through some of those same chapters. And she says in this book, in Gethsemane, Jesus was in great agony. He went to his disciples for encouragement. They were sleeping. He was disappointed, but he did his best. He's disappointed. He's just begging them almost for some kind of assurance, some kind of strength. But what does he do? He tries to excuse them, saying the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Okay? And then in the same book, same chapter in Gethsemane, Jesus makes his final decision to save mankind, regardless of the cost, to himself, and he falls dying to the ground. So Jesus is dying. And she says, the angels beheld the Savior's agony. They saw their Lord enclosed by legions of satanic forces. The legions of apostasy watched intently. The powers of good and evil waited to see what was going to happen. When everything was at stake, when Jesus falls dying, a mighty angel, the one who took Satan's place in heaven, he comes to the side of Christ to revive him. This angel pointed Jesus to the open heavens. So he says to Jesus, okay, look up to the open heavens. Think of all of the souls that are going to be saved as a result of your suffering. He assured Jesus that his Father was greater than Satan and more powerful, and that the kingdom of this world would be given to the saints of the Most High. So quite a message of encouragement from this powerful angel. She says that Christ's agony did not cease, but he came forth calm and serene. A heavenly peace rested upon his blood-stained face. He had borne that which no human being could ever bear, for he tasted the suffering of death for every man. So this is when the mob came. They bound Jesus and led him away to the court of Caiaphas to be interviewed by Annas, the former and more experienced high priest. Annas was so respected by the people that his word was taken as the voice of God. Annas was cunning and subtle and crafty. He was insulting. He tried to trap Jesus into condemning himself. And meanwhile, what was Jesus doing? He was very patient and gentle, and he would not be provoked. I think Annas and these two high priests, they probably would be known today as policy men. If you read in the Spirit of Prophecy about policy men, they just go by the rules instead of by heart. Okay, so Annas sent Jesus to the throne of Caiaphas, where there was a multitude of people. They were so excited because there's Jesus and something bad is going to happen. But Jesus alone, she said, was calm and serene. As Caiaphas looked upon the prisoner, he was struck with admiration, for Jesus was noble and had a dignified bearing. Caiaphas was convicted that this man was akin to God. But he dismissed that thought, and he began sneering. He was haughty, making demands. Jesus was calm and majestic. Caiaphas demanded an oath, saying, I adjure thee by the living God that thou tell us whether or not thou be the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus couldn't resist that. He needed to let people know that that the Father was his Father, that he was the Son of God. But he knew if he admitted that his death would be certain. But in addition to agreeing to that, he also said, "Hereafter ye shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of glory." Caiaphas did not believe in the resurrection. He did not believe in life after death. And so what did he do? He rent his robes. He's the high priest. He's got on the high priest robes. But in that act, he could no longer be the high priest. He had broken the law. And the angels, they were recording every detail of all of this. I'd love to share with you some insights about Judas. There's a whole chapter in Desire of Ages, but I need to move on. Next, in Pilate's judgment hall, Pilate looked at Jesus and he could see no guilt, no expression of fear, no boldness, no defiance. He saw a man of calm and dignified bearing, whose countenance bore not the marks of criminal, but the signature of heaven. Pilate knew that Jesus was innocent, but Pilate was a coward. And he because he feared for his reputation, he condemned Jesus to death. Herod was next. Notice what's happening here. In the 1858 book, there's no focus on Annas, Caiaphas, Pilate, Herod. That book focused on the good and bad angels. But this book, Desire of Ages, it shows the interaction of evil men in positions of power in contrast to the noble character of Jesus. So we see the true character of Christ, his magnificent love for each of us. And we might, in these chapters, get glimpses of our own sinfulness. In Herod, Pilate, and the others, we might see characteristics that we need to overcome, lest we suffer the same eternal destruction that those men will face someday. So Herod looks at Jesus, and what does he see? He sees wisdom and purity. He felt that he was beholding God on his throne as he looked at Jesus. But Herod, he was vain and pompous and eager to show his power. So he condemned Jesus. These rulers, Herod, Pilate, Annas, Caiaphas, they all judged Jesus by their own vile character. Satan was leading these rulers, and not only them, but the multitude that were demanding that Jesus be crucified, saying his blood be on us and on our children. Ellen White says that Jesus will come in the clouds of glory accompanied by angels 10,000 times 10,000 and thousands of thousands. That's 100 million angels plus. We can say more about Jesus on the cross. What did he hear from the cross? He heard jeers and curses. And meanwhile, what did he do? He took care of his mother. Only the repentant thief was to utter words of faith and comfort to Jesus. Jesus, how did he respond to him? With soft and melodious, full of love, compassion, and power, saying, "Verily I say unto thee today, thou shalt be with me in paradise." She says, with amazement, the angels beheld the infinite love of Jesus when suffering the most intense agony of mind and body. He thought only of others. He prayed for the forgiveness of his enemies, for humanity. There's so much more in these chapters. Please read them. Please reread Desire of Ages. Please get this other little book and read it. So not only do we learn the details of the crucifixion and resurrection, also as you read these, you can see where you fit in the story. Which character do you identify with? Do you identify with proud Herod, or with cowardly Pilate, or who? And then see how Jesus related to that person. So all of this and much more is what Ellen White saw in vision on March the 14th, 1858. This is what she told that crowd of 400 visitors in Battle Creek a few weeks later, a story that took 10 hours to relate. And this is a small part of what God has given to us through the spirit of prophecy. We are very, very blessed as Adventists, knowing these truths. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, on page 80, actually on the back of your bulletin, there's a quote from Desire of Ages. It says, "It would be well for us to spend a thoughtful hour each day in contemplation of the life of Christ. We should take it point by point and let the imagination grasp each scene, especially the closing ones. As we thus dwell upon his great sacrifice for us, our confidence in him will be more constant, our love will be quickened, and we shall be more deeply imbued with his spirit." Read these chapters. They are very important. Take in the intensity of this war at the cross in the 1858 edition of the Great Controversy between Christ and his angels and Satan and his angels, and then read Desire of Ages, where you behold the matchless love of Jesus with his determination to provide salvation for you at any cost to himself. Jesus was and is and always truly will be the desire of ages. That is why the book has that name, Desire of Ages, because Jesus is that for us. Now unto him that is able to keep you from falling and to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy, to the only wise God, our Savior, be glory and majesty, dominion and power, both now and forever. Amen.